Hello, you are listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer and Amazon #1 bestselling author. You can find out more about me and my work at catherinecarrigan.com and unlimitedenergynow.com. While you're there, definitely sign up for my newsletter so you can learn even more about how you can heal yourself naturally. Now, our guests today include two sleep experts. Patrick Wanis is a PhD human behavior expert, and you can find out more about Patrick Wanis and his work at patrickwanis.com. We also have as our guest here today, Chris Burres, scientific researcher at myvitalseed.com. Welcome, Patrick Wanis and Chris Burres.
Thank you, Catherine, for having us.
Now, I know that you all have generously donated some gifts for our audience today. So will you start by just sharing the gifts? And I also want to explain for our audience that Patrick Wanis and Chris Burres are giving these away with no strings attached. So will you share our gifts for our audience?
Absolutely. So you're right. It's very typical if somebody's giving away an audio file that an email is collected and marketing ensues. In our case, there is no email requirement. All you need to do is go to myvitalseed.com/natural healing, and you'll have access to the books. There's actually an audio book, which is Neutralize the 7 Emotions That Are Holding You Hostage Now, and then a guided meditation, Overcome Fear and Anxiety and Enjoy Peace of Mind. And I think peace of mind is something that we all need in these crazy times.
Absolutely. And for our audience, I want to also mention that like Patrick Wanis and Chris Burres, I'm also doing a free giveaway for everyone. I've given away the little book of breathwork to people in 12 countries for free. You don't have to do anything, just send me an email, Catherine@catherinecarrigan.com. And this is breathing exercises, affirmations, and hand mudras that you can do anytime, anywhere to lower anxiety, improve your sleeping, and increase your inner peace. Now, Patrick Wanis and Chris Burres, what are the primary emotions that cause people to have difficulty sleeping?
Well, anything that actually disrupts your endocrine system, your nervous system, anything that puts you into a state of hyperarousal, anything that triggers the amygdala, anything that triggers the fight or flight response, and then accordingly will also then affect your digestion. When you put all these together, they're all going to affect your sleep. So sleep not only follows the circadian rhythm for the majority of us. There are some people that are truly night owls. But anything that disrupts that circadian rhythm is going to affect our sleep. And obviously at a time when we have such extraordinary uncertainty, instability, insecurity, unemployment, and such a disruption to life generally, people's bodies are impacted, their endocrine system is impacted, their nervous system is impacted. Then in turn, they can't sleep and they can't function well cognitively. So you have an imbalance between the entire nervous system as well as the cognitive functioning.
Right. And I know that research here in the US has shown that, over, I think, the past 2 months during the COVID pandemic, that clinical anxiety and depression among American adults is roughly around 30%. So about 1/3 of the population, at least in the US, is experiencing clinical and anxiety. What is your research about how people's sleep has been affected during this time?
Well, the first thing that I would say is, again, to sort of build upon what you just cited, anxiety being two of the key emotions we're experiencing. So fear and anxiety, I put them together in one umbrella because that's the first response that we all experience. And then that leads to emotions such as sadness, because sadness is a part of grief. When the pandemic first hit, we all suddenly lost a lot of our freedom, a lot of our rights, a lot of our lifestyle, some of us our jobs, our careers. We lost connections. There's so much loss, and that loss leads to sadness and grieving. The depression enters when we start to ruminate and we start to get concerned about constantly going around in our head what we're worrying about, what we're thinking about, and then I link depression and anxiety in the sense of anxiety is that feeling of your world being out of control, and then you're trying to control things that are outside of your control. When you move past that and you're just suddenly thinking and thinking and thinking, as well as taking no action, not focusing on any solution, then you enter a state of depression. When you put all of these emotions together, it's not possible to sleep because, again, your digestion is affected, your nervous system is affected, your endocrine system is affected. So your whole body is out of balance. I mean, that's what your show is about. Natural healing. And natural healing is about your body being in a state of homeostasis. It's about bringing the body back into balance. When any part of your body or natural system is out of balance, the whole body and system goes out of balance. That affects your sleep. And if we look at it specifically, when it comes time to sleep and people are exhausted from either overthinking, constantly stressing, either experiencing a lot of fear or a lot of anxiety, or the emotions are very heavy, your body's feeling heavy, you're feeling sad, you're not eating well, you're not digesting well, then you can't sleep. Many people wake up halfway through the night, they've got all these racing thoughts, and it just continues to spiral. And I think Chris has a really good term for that.
The horrible emotional sleep spiral.
Yeah.
And it's a challenge because, you know, you sit up, you're ruminating, it's keeping you up. And what a lot of people don't realize is sleep is so important to be able to handle your emotions the next day. All of these crazy emotions that we're being forced to face right now. And you know, our cell phones are really nice because they have these little bars that tell you how well charged up they are. But our brains don't, especially as it relates to how we're going to handle emotions over the next day. And so we don't wake up and have this little bar saying, hey, you know, you didn't get that much sleep, so your ability to handle your emotions today is going to be significantly reduced. So try and be aware of that, because sometimes that awareness can help a lot. So you end up going through that day. Maybe there's mistakes made because you're not in the right mindset and you don't have that rest that you need to make good emotional decisions. And then you go into that next night's sleep. Again, this horrible emotional sleep spiral where you've just got more to maybe even lament, and that's going to keep you up even more.
Right. Now, both Patrick Wanis and Chris Burres, both of you mentioned a pattern that contributes both to anxiety and depression, which is rumination or overthinking. And there is a Bach flower remedy, a flower essence called white chestnut, okay? And white chestnut helps to calm the mind. So a lot of us, again, you know, as Patrick Wanis said, you know, we're trying to control things that we can't control, like the global economy.
Yeah.
Right?
Good luck.
Yeah, good luck on that. We can just laugh about that. You know, and we're overthinking, you know, what do I need to do? What do I need to do differently? And so white chestnut is a Bach flower remedy that's very easily available at most health food stores. When you take flower essences, you take 2 to 4 drops under the tongue 5 times a day, or 2 to 4 drops in your water bottle. And it works very, very effectively at calming that overactive mind. Now,
how would you compare that to valerian root?
Good question. So flower essences and herbs work differently. Flower essences are vibrational remedies. So they work on literally changing your frequency, versus herbs work more on the physical level.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
For those who don't know, valerian root is a good way. You take there's a sleepy time tea, and you can take valerian root like about an hour to 45 minutes before you go to sleep, and it will help quiet your mind also.
Yeah, and whereas white chestnut, you can take it throughout the day and it's not going to make you sleepy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like we all want to be able to focus. If you're overthinking, you know, you're over focusing, right? But white chestnut you can take throughout the day and just quiet that overactive ego mind, and, you know, right? Whereas valerian root you can take and it'll calm the mind and you can go to sleep. That's a great question, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Catherine, if I may also say, I think it's important to get very clear about what rumination is, because when you were talking about rumination, you actually asked questions. You said, like, what do I need to do differently? What do I need to do? Rumination usually isn't focused on questions. It's usually just repeating the problem over and over again without thinking about what the solution is. Rumination is almost a constant way of whining and saying, this is wrong and this is bad, rather than thinking, what is the solution? What can I do to resolve this? What is within my control? What is outside of my control? Can I distinguish the two? And then can I place all of my focus and all of my energy only upon the things which I can control?
Wonderful point. Fabulous point. Now, Patrick Wanis and Chris Burres, when we recognize that we're experiencing depression or anxiety during this time and noticing that we're having greater trouble sleeping, what can we do naturally to alleviate those emotions?
Well, the first thing in my free audiobook of Neutralize the 7 Emotions, I identify the 7 umbrellas of emotions. So you want to get very clear about, obviously, fear and anxiety is the number 1. Sadness would be number 2. Then you've got people who actually feel like they're victims and helpless and hopeless and apathetic, and they lose sense of purpose and meaning. You also have people who experience a lot of anger and rage, and I'm talking about that occurring prior to the protests. And then there's people who also experience guilt and shame associated with where they are in life or what the result is. If I've lost my job, I don't have any money, savings, it's very easy to experience guilt or shame. And then the other one, of course, is depression. So you want to get clear about what are you actually experiencing. One of the things that I teach to all my clients, and I teach this in workshops with huge companies like Shell, Orange Theory Fitness, Air France, I teach you're allowed to feel whatever you feel. Whatever you feel is important, whatever you feel is significant and does make a difference. Now what matters is not trying to deny, ignore, or run away from the feeling. It's identifying very clearly what is that emotion, from where is it coming, what's the thought behind the emotion, and now what am I going to do next? It's okay to feel angry, but how is the anger going to help me? If the anger is going to drive me to take some positive action towards a solution, excellent. If it's just going to make me vent or end up taking out my anger on my partner, my children, my colleagues, then it's obviously destructive anger. The same applies to sadness. So you want to get clear about sadness. It's natural to feel sad with such extraordinary uncertainty and disruption to life, and disruption to what we might have labeled as freedoms and maybe even in some cases privileges that are being taken away, etc. But get clear about the sadness. What do you believe you've lost? Maybe you lost something you had. Perhaps you lost something you thought you were going to have, an opportunity, a career promotion, etc. Write these things out and get clear about them, and how have they affected you? If I've lost this, what's the impact on me? Because what you're doing now is you're able to get clearer about what the emotion is, how it's impacting you, and that leads you to mindfulness. Mindfulness is also about observation. You're able to observe what's happening, and then that's easier to take action, because as soon as you can start labeling the actual emotion and you can recognize what the thought is behind it, from where it's coming, it has less control over you. So it's not like a blanket that's just on top of you. You've taken the blanket off, you're looking at the blanket, and then you decide what to do next. Be careful of, well, what do I do next? Because it's very easy for us to engage in actions that just keep feeding and driving that emotion and making it worse. So we might end up going from sadness to self-pity, to victimhood, to feeling helpless and hopeless and apathetic. The same with anger. Anger might, if we keep feeding the anger, we can easily end up engaging in rage, or as I said earlier, taking it out. So it's okay to feel whatever you feel. Get clear about what's driving it, what are the thoughts, and what can you do with this emotion? What do you need to actually do that's going to bring you towards a solution? Sometimes the solution is purely acceptance, accepting that you can't change this thing. I can't change the pandemic, but what can I do? I can change the way that I respond. I can control my thoughts, my emotions, and my behaviors. And the other thing too regarding sadness and loss, you've written out what you believe you've lost, write out what you've still got left, because this is really important, so you can start to move closer to gratitude. Because truly, the rich, wealthy people are the people who are very happy with what they have and not constantly thinking about what they don't have. So if you constantly think about what's missing in your life and what you've lost and what you don't have, you'll end up becoming much more miserable. And I think if I can just add one more thing, every study has shown, and there's a great book by Sean Achor, who spent decades doing this research, the happier your brain, that when your brain is in a happy state versus a neutral, negative, or stress state, you not only have increased problem-solving skills, improved memory, peripheral vision, but all of your resources are much more available. Now, again, that doesn't mean that you're not allowed to grieve. If you are grieving, find someone to comfort you. Find a support partner, find an accountability partner if you're trying to move towards goals, but reach out to your social circle. Every study shows that one of the key components of health, whether we're talking about physical, mental, or emotional health, is your social circle, your support circle. So ask for help, ask for support, get involved.
Right. And you made a great point, which is that when we're happier, we're more connected to our resources. I have 27 years full-time experience in natural healing. I'm 61. And the first 10 years was all about healing the brain. And when a person's stressed, the non-dominant hemisphere of their brain is 75 to 85% shut down. So as one of my clients said, when I'm stressed, it's like I'm working with half the brain. And I'm like, that's exactly what's happening, right?
Yeah.
Now we're talking today about how we can sleep and how we can find the peace within to go to sleep so that we can restore ourselves. So how does lack of sleep affect our immune system? Because during this time, you really want to keep our immune system strong.
Well, I think the first thing, as we said earlier, anything that disrupts your endocrine system, but specifically there are emotions that have been researched that actually lower your immune system, such as grieving. So when you're experiencing all these, what I refer to as agitative emotions during the day, you're impacting the natural processes of the body. That disrupts your sleep. When your sleep is disrupted, then your immune system is lowered again. So it really is what Chris called earlier, a horrible emotional sleep spiral, that you're not able to effectively deal with your emotions and your thoughts are taking over. Then you can't sleep. Then your immune system is lowered. Then you can't function mentally and emotionally to handle what else is in front of you. So you're never able to get on top of it.
Right. Now, many people often turn to natural supplements such as melatonin to help them sleep. However, melatonin is a hormone, and whenever you take any hormone, it affects all the other hormones because the hormones exist in balance. How can taking too much melatonin hurt us? And how does a person know when they're taking the right amount?
Well, I think this comes down, and you've brought to my attention, white chestnut. So I'll always be looking for these natural remedies, these opportunities that you can take advantage of and try. And everybody's metabolism, everybody's body is different. And so white chestnut may knock it out of the park for Catherine, and for Patrick, it may not work at all, right? So those are things you've got to be open to go out and try. So when it comes to melatonin, you're right, it's a hormone, and it's got some particular challenges. A lot of people think it's a hormone that helps you sleep. And actually, there's a really good book called Why We Sleep by Dr. Matthew Walker. And he talks about, he actually studied at or was a professor at Harvard Medical School. He talks about how melatonin is more like a starting gun, right? It's the hormone that tells your body, okay, now it's time to start getting ready to sleep. And there's lots of studies that show if you don't take it at the right time, it's not very beneficial to you getting to sleep. And if you take too much, imagine if this, in your in-body starting gun is saying, okay, because you have so much melatonin in your body, because you took too much, it just keeps going, okay, and now it's time to sleep, and now it's time to sleep. So you wake up groggy, and so you have some challenges. Not saying that it's not a potential solution. There's just a lot of kind of downsides to melatonin.
Right.
And really you want to attack the problem like white chestnut, maybe it's valerian. And then when you're ready, I want to talk about some really kind of very simple and very practical sleep hygiene techniques that you can use to kind of help foster good sleep.
Oh, let's talk about that now.
All right. So really sleep hygiene is this fancy word for your kind of habits and traditions and processes that you have in place that help you get a good night's sleep. The research is very clear. The more habitual you are about your sleep preparation, again, that's called sleep hygiene, the better sleep you will get. So if you're the kind of person who has whatever tea, a sleepy time tea at exactly 7:30 p.m. or 8:30, whatever your time frame is, and then you go to your bedroom and you turn the lights off at exactly 9:15, and then if you've got all of these processes in place, you are probably already sleeping pretty well. You've probably experienced some disruption during all of this kind of craziness. But if you keep those habits going, you're going to sleep better than the average person who's like, oh, let me turn off the TV and go try and get to sleep. So I'm going to share with you just kind of 3 tips. These are pretty important. One of them, the first one, is related to naps. A lot of people are working from home now. Maybe they're having lunch on the couch now where they never did. And a nap has become part of it. First off, good. The research on naps is just phenomenal. You want to improve your cognitive function for the latter parts of the day, take a nap. What you want to make sure, though, is make sure that nap isn't longer than 30 minutes. Anything over 30 minutes. So our bodies have this natural circadian rhythm. We mentioned it. And really what that is as the sun is rising, our bodies understand it's time to be active. And as the sun is setting, our bodies understand it's time to be less active and begin that sleep process. If you take more than a 30-minute nap at any time in the day, you can interrupt that circadian rhythm, and that can adversely affect your ability to sleep that night. Another thing as it relates to naps, make sure you're not napping after 4 p.m. Because that can also interrupt your circadian rhythm. So keep naps under 30 minutes. If you've got to set an alarm, great. I still encourage you to take naps because the data is just consistent. Naps are good for your cognitive ability in the rest of the day. The next thing to keep track of, and this may be even more important than it ever has been during this kind of time of COVID, where we're trying to absorb as much information and the information is all over the place, and people hate people who are wearing masks and people hate people who are not wearing masks. And we've got all of this going on. That's related to your cell phone. And there's 2 things that I'll say with your cell phone or your tablet or even your computer. First off, all of these devices give off a blue light. That blue light, what it does is it confuses our brain and convinces us that it's the middle of the day. Again, if you're thinking about your circadian rhythm, hey, the sun is rising, it's time to wake up and be active. The sun is setting, it's time to slow down and get ready for sleep. If we've somehow convinced our brain that it's the middle of the afternoon, even when it's potentially late into the night, you can imagine how disruptive to your circadian rhythm that can be. Most devices, almost all devices, have a blue light blocker, so you can actually manage that blue light on your device. Of course, you can get some glasses that are blue light blockers. I know on the Apple devices, it's a feature called Night Shift. Android has so many different devices. It may be called Comfort View or blue light filter. I know Dr. Wanis, is called a blue light filter, and he actually leaves his on all day. So there's no opportunity for his computer to interrupt the blue light coming off of his computer to interrupt and convince his brain that it's the middle of the day. Of course, you see the photos behind him when he's working on photos. Those are his. When he's working on photos, he's got to turn the blue light filter off because you have to have kind of real light interpretations. But keeping it on all the time is certainly an option. I recommend that about an hour to 2 hours before the sun sets, that you turn those features, you set those features to come on so that you're not letting your brain, as the sun is setting, convince itself that it's the middle of the day. The other thing is these devices, like I kind of mentioned in the beginning of this section, there's a lot of information, there's a lot of anxiety that can be caused by these devices. And there always was, even before COVID, is my family as good as that family, or is my exercise as good as that person? Like there's a lot of anxiety inducing features on these devices. And so I suggest 1 to 2 hours before you go to sleep, turn off your cell phone, turn off your tablet, and if at all possible, turn off your computer. Let's just disconnect from those. I recommend a lot of people charge their phones next to their bed. I recommend you actually have a charging station just outside of your bedroom or down the hall. Maybe it stays in the TV room, in the kitchen. Keep that device away from you, and then break away from that device about an hour to 2 hours prior. And then, so we got naps and we've got electronic devices. Let's wrap it up with this one. Some people, this really is upsetting to. It's related to alcohol. A lot of people believe that if they take a drink or two right before they go to bed, that it can help them sleep. And it certainly knocks you out. It certainly can cause you to go unconscious. But it's very similar. You've got to be very careful. It's very similar to in that book, Why We Sleep. It talks about the $2 billion quote unquote sleep aid industry, and how there's these prescription medications that people take right before we go to sleep, or right before the consumers take those before they go to sleep. And then they wake up, and what's happened is the chemical pressure called to desire sleep, and it's called adenosine, has been relaxed. It's been released. And so you wake up not desiring sleep, but you actually haven't gotten the healing sleep that you need throughout the night. You do, I mean, we all know that good sleep is good for our mental, emotional, and physical well-being. And so you've taken this, it's kind of like if somebody hits you over the head with a hammer and you are unconscious for 20 hours, would you wake up and go, well, that was very refreshing? I can promise you probably don't desire sleep at that time, but you haven't gotten the healing sleep. And they talk about everything. Everyone's familiar with REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep. And then there's another type of sleep called NREM sleep that was really highlighted in that book. I highly recommend the book, obviously. And so it's really important. What's interesting about kind of alcohol and these kind of quote unquote sleep aids is how they're different. We're going to talk a little bit about a molecule I've been working with really since 1991. And the people who consume that molecule talk about taking it in the morning, feeling mental focus and energy during the day, and then better sleep that night, which is the complete antithesis to take something and knock you out and then wake up not desiring sleep. Take it in the morning, mental focus and energy during the day, and better sleep that night. So it's just an interesting contrast between those two. So make sure you keep your naps under 30 minutes. We'll kind of briefly tie this together. Use that blue light filter. And then if you're going to have drinks, so there's a lot of research that says if you're the kind of person who unwinds with a drink, that can be very helpful. Just make sure that you're having that about 2 hours before you go to sleep, so your body can metabolize the alcohol before you're actually going to sleep.
That's a wonderful suggestions. Now, what exactly is adenosine, and how can we optimize that naturally?
So adenosine, if you think, okay, so we'll get a little kind of technical here. Inside of every cell are mitochondria, and mitochondria go through an ATP process, the A in ATP process. So it's really breaking down ATP to provide the energy to your body. The A is adenosine. So as your body's as your cells are going about their normal activity throughout the day, this adenosine is building up in your body. The only way to relieve that adenosine is actually to sleep. Now, we've just kind of mentioned that if you are sleeping with this sleep aid, then you are actually relieving that adenosine pressure to desire sleep. But you're not getting your REM sleep and your NREM sleep. So you've got to make sure sleep serves a very important purpose. If you think about us as evolving creatures, to be unconscious for 8 hours is probably the most dangerous thing we could possibly do in a world of predators, right? And so it serves a very specific purpose. And I highly recommend that book, Why We Sleep, because it talks a little bit about what those purposes are. You know, people often don't realize that when during daylight savings time, when people, some fun thing that we do here in the States, when people actually lose 1 hour of sleep, heart attacks go up. And when people gain an hour of sleep, heart attacks go down. So sleep impacts your cardiovascular health. If you haven't had sleep for a number of days and you do a glucose test, you can actually show up as a diabetic, even though the only thing that you've done is not sleep for a couple of days, right? So sleep impacts your ability to process insulin and sugar in your body. And so again, we all kind of, as a society, we do this. We understand that sleep is good for our mental, physical, and emotional well-being, and we all say, yeah, absolutely, gotta, must get your sleep, absolutely, well, unless there's something else to do, right? And I think it's very detrimental, because that sleep helps your cognitive ability, helps your cardiovascular health, helps your ability to process insulin. It literally does help your mental, physical, and emotional well-being, and it shouldn't be an optional thing. Patrick talks about, we're the only creatures on the planet that will forego sleep for no good reason, right? I mean, we could argue that whatever, going and catching a late night movie is a good reason, but in reality, it's no good, healthful reason. So it's just interesting that we're so different, and we really need to be cognizant of this, and actually make good decisions, create good sleep hygiene, and make sure you've got a good focus on getting a good night's sleep.
All right. So what are some top natural supplements that people can take to help them improve their sleep, that improve our overall hormonal balance rather than throwing everything off?
Yeah, well, I think, you just mentioned white chestnut, right? So that's something that you want to investigate. Valerian, if you just get sleepy time tea, it's got a cute little teddy bear in his PJs on it, and take that about an hour before, it'll quiet your mind. It's pretty impressive how you can take this tea in your mind, which was kind of going rapid fire, one thing to the other, probably on things you can't control, instead of actually making a plan for those things you can control. So definitely make sure you download Patrick's book, and get into the exercises that he has to help you through that process. Melatonin certainly has its place. Again, it's more of the firing gun. Hey, begin sleep now. You've got to take it at the right time. If you take too much, you will actually wake up groggy. So you've got to be careful. And it may take, if that's the right decision for you, it may take some triggering. And then I can talk a little bit about the molecule that I've been manufacturing since 1991. It's a pretty amazing situation, where they discovered it in 1985. In 1996, the people who discovered it actually won the Nobel Prize for the discovery. They knew that this would be a very important molecule in society. It's affectionately called the buckyball. We call it ESS60 if it's something that you're thinking about consuming. Really, until 2012, they just figured it was great for industrial applications, and they would find some amazing application, and then it would be everywhere. And when you're going to have a molecule that's going to be everywhere, you have to study the safety of it. So they actually did a toxicity study. They published the results of a toxicity study in 2012. And instead of this material, they kind of, for various reasons, thought it would be toxic. Instead of being toxic, those rats given the ESS60 with olive oil lived 90% longer than the control group. Now, that may sound amazing, because it is. It's the single longest longevity experiment on mammals ever. Of course, it's peer-reviewed and published research. And so really about that time, my company actually delivered the material to those researchers. And there's actually another piece of that study that's pretty important and pretty amazing. And that's that even though those rats, so a typical Worcester rat, that's the rat they used in that study, they'll die at about 32 months, and they'll have this known amount of tumors. And if you're watching, I'm actually drawing a line. The amount of tumors in their body increases with how long they live. So even though the rats, given the MyVital-C formula, lived 90% longer, almost twice as long, none of them died with any tumors, which is a pretty miraculous result, obviously. And so in 2012, they published this. Really, we're hesitant. I'm a carbon nanomaterial scientist. I'm not supposed to have a supplement. Like, that's not what I grew. I didn't aspire to have a supplement on the market. But people just start clamoring for this product, and they start sharing all the results. And really, in 2018, I'm like, the phone calls that we're getting and the desire for this product is so high. So we kind of really just acquiesced and put this product, MyVital-C, on the market. And like I mentioned earlier, the most consistent testimonial about people who consume this product is, well, one, they tend not to take it at night because it has, for some, the ability to keep them up. And in my case, that's not true, but I'm also a guy who can drink coffee right before going to bed. So I'm not maybe a good test case. Most of our customers take it in the morning. They report mental focus and energy during the day, and then better sleep that night. And so that would be, I mean, you may have some more ideas about additional supplements that might help people to sleep. I mean, you've already presented to me white chestnut, but really for me, it's valerian root, white chestnut, potentially melatonin. That's a little more kind of precarious, and then my Vital C.
Awesome. Now, when our blood sugar drops during the night, the stress hormone cortisol goes up and may wake us up. How can balancing our blood sugar throughout the day help us to improve our sleep?
Well, I think you already answered that question, Catherine, because you said how it impacts cortisol. So if you're going to balance your blood sugar throughout the day, then you've got greater chance of cortisol not drastically or spiking during the night. We also need to recognize the relationship between cortisol and stress. And again, that's based upon our thoughts and our emotions. So depending on what you're experiencing emotionally, depending on what thoughts you are driving and feeding, they're also going to spike cortisol, or they're going to bring it into balance. So it's important to understand that your thoughts, which in turn create your emotions, also can throw your entire endocrine system out of balance and often raise cortisol. That's why people who are stressed out often end up putting on weight because of elevated cortisol, and also because when we're in elevated cortisol, we start to desire different kinds of foods. And there's been many studies that show that one of the reasons why we crave carbohydrates is to actually blunt the stress response. So you've got to look at yourself as holistic. It's not just, oh, let's go get a supplement to lower or balance our blood sugar. Let's look at the entire lifestyle. What are you doing in terms of exercise? What are you doing in terms of deep breathing? What are you doing in terms of meditation? What are you doing to actually resolve and find solutions to the problems at hand? What are you doing to heal your relationships? So you've got to look at the entire, you've got to look at yourself holistically. And holistically literally means, like a whole 360 from every angle. The other thing too is to become aware that your thoughts and your emotions will lead to excessive dreaming. And excessive dreaming disrupts your sleep, and that's why you end up feeling extremely tired and you haven't actually found any solutions and your mind's just repeating everything. Dreaming is an important part of resolving issues, but excessive dreaming is not good for you.
Interesting.
I think something that I could add there is, if you think about the sleep process, there's a lot of healing that needs to happen, right? So there's physical healing, there's mental healing, there's emotional healing that needs to happen. But the body has to prioritize what it's going to do first, right? And so if managing blood sugar is the first thing that it needs to do, then it's going to do that. If you've done a better job of managing it throughout the day, then you can take that off of the checklist, and your sleep process, your healing processes are able to move on to the next thing on the list. So this ESS60 molecule, it's a known antioxidant and a known anti-inflammatory. So some of the thought processes of why it helps people sleep, why people report better sleep, is that it's taking care of your oxidative stress, and it's taking care of a lot of your inflammation. And those are probably, like, let's be realistic, current medical science says that aging is an oxidation and an inflammation process. So it's got to be very important for your body while it's sleeping to take care of oxidative stress and to take care of this inflammation. And if this one particular supplement has helped to do that throughout the day, and you go into sleep kind of having those things checked off, then you can immediately move on to the next things.
Right. I think one other thing I'd like to add, Catherine, is since we've been in the beginning, I talked about the significance of the social circle of support, and research shows dramatic changes in your actual physical body, in your physiology, when someone hugs you, when someone caresses you, when someone touches you, which we've all lost during this pandemic because we have to stand 6 feet away. And I think that also is contributing to a lot of the anger and a lot of the way that we react. We explode at people for things that we normally wouldn't explode at people, because we're not getting that touch. We're not getting that human connection. We're not getting that sense of comfort. We're not getting that real sense of unity and belonging. And again, research does show that stress in the body and even cortisol levels can be lowered through through the appropriate touch. That means through a comforting hug or a caress, or someone, you know, literally comforting you, holding you and comforting you. So again, I think the key point here is you've got to look at yourself from every angle. I don't believe in just saying exercise intensely, or just take this supplement, or just do deep breathing. I do yoga every morning, but I know that's not a panacea. There are people who talk about meditation. I meditate, but meditation is not a panacea. It's not only meditation, because even if you look at the monks, they still study. They still do other things. So you've got to look at yourself as a whole and say, what am I taking in? What are the thoughts I'm taking in? What is the food I'm taking? What is the water I'm taking in? What is the air I'm taking in? Who are the people around me that I'm taking in? Because we are constantly interacting and in some cases reacting with our entire world. We're not isolated. So your relationship could elevate your cortisol levels, or it could actually create more oxytocin in your body, which is basically known as the love hormone. That's where you feel bonded. So when a mother gives birth, immediately there's a rush of oxytocin in her body, and that's what creates the bond with the child. When a mother breastfeeds her baby, it creates oxytocin and creates the bond. When a couple have orgasm, oxytocin is released and they feel closer. So again, social connection is critical during this time because it also helps with our emotions. And there's only one emotion that you shouldn't constantly share with other people, and that's anger. Because most of the times when you're talking about how angry you are, there is a point where you've gone past it, you've gone over the line, and now you're just creating more anger. Venting is okay if you know how much to say and know when to stop. With all the other emotions, if you're talking about sadness, if you're talking about feeling helpless, hopeless, or powerless, that actually is comforting and soothing. But anger, if you keep talking about being angry, you recreate that in your body. Anger creates the rush of adrenaline, epinephrine, norepinephrine, which, if you're not being active, you're just standing there, is actually a poison. So become aware of your social connections. Look for a support partner. And if you're trying to get through your day and you're starting to create a schedule so that you can get back into a life of meaning and purpose, find an accountability partner, someone who you can call each other every day and say, how are you doing? How are you doing with this goal and that goal? Ask for help and support.
Right. And you brought up a great point, which is about anger. And my understanding is the biochemical effects of anger are quite strong. 5 minutes of anger will raise your cortisol for 6 hours. Mm-hmm. So if you get angry at like the middle of the day, let's say noon, well, you're gonna experience the biochemical effects of that till 6 o'clock. But if you get angry at night, that's going to definitely affect your sleep.
Yeah, and I'd say if you're going to get angry, make sure you recognize what is the anger, what's driving the anger, how is it serving me or is it not serving me? And if you want to bring your body back into a balanced state, and I'm sure you teach this with your work, you can turn to something such as deep breathing to actually help your body to go from the fight or flight, from the sympathetic nervous system, to start engage more of the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest and digest process.
Right. And that brings me back to all of us are doing giveaways to help our audience right now. I'm giving away the little book of breath work, which is breathing exercises, affirmations, and hand mudras that you can do anytime, anywhere. And to receive that, just email me, Catherine at catherinecarrigan.com. Again, no strings attached, and I'll send you the book. And Patrick Wanis and Chris Burres, will you share with our audience your giveaways as well? Because we're all doing what we can to assist people at this time.
Absolutely. We're giving away, and Patrick put this together and actually narrated it. Neutralize the 7 emotions that are holding you hostage right now. And then a guided meditation, overcoming fear and anxiety and enjoying peace of mind. It has some breathing in it as well. And you can get that by going to myvitalc.com/natural healing. Just a couple of things that you can do at that link. One of them, there is a link directly to Patrick's website, so you can connect with him. He does a weekly newsletter. It's absolutely free. I highly recommend it. There's a lot of thought and expertise goes into this and providing guidance over whatever it may be. Obviously, a lot of them have been COVID related recently. And then if you're interested in trying My Vital C, there's a link to get you to the home page. If you are interested, we sell one bottle, or you can actually get on subscription and save like 25%. You can cancel at any time, so we obviously recommend that. And then we've created a coupon for your audience, Catherine. The coupon code is Natural Healing, and that'll get them an additional $15 off on their initial purchase if they're interested.
Right. So Patrick Wanis and Chris Burres, we've been talking about how to sleep better. So any final thoughts for our audience?
I would always come back to one of my key platforms, which is recognize there are only really two things you can control. That's your thoughts and your emotions. Your thoughts lead to emotions. Some people say, no, you can't control emotions. That's not true. If you control your response to your emotions, you're actually controlling the emotion. So recognize you can control your thoughts and emotions. Don't waste your energy or resources on things you can't control.
And I'm going to add, just go to myvitalc.com/natural healing, get that audiobook, get that meditation file. Those are things that tangible things that you can get. You can download them or listen to them right on the web browser from a mobile device, and no email is required. So go ahead and get those.
Wonderful. Very generous of both of you. You've been listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer, Amazon #1 bestselling author. You can find out more about me and my work at catherinecarrigan.com and unlimitedenergynow.com. Our guest today has been Patrick Wanis, PhD human behavior expert at patrickwanis.com, and Chris Burres, scientific research at myvitalc.com. And remember, when you take the time to take better care of yourself and maintain good sleep hygiene, you can restore your immune system and heal yourself naturally. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.